Roses are red and violets are blue, and we all know that flowers are one of the all-time favorite gifts on Valentine's Day. But have you ever stopped to think about what you were actually doing on Valentine's Day? And how would a plant feel when they look at human beings giving flowers to one another? Because if you think about it carefully, a flower is the reproductive organ of a plant. So what we're doing on Valentine's Day is we're actually taking plant private parts and giving them around. And if I was a plant, I'd find them really strange. I mean, I don't know why people find it so happy to receive my private parts. Well, yeah, welcome to the exciting world of plant reproduction. And some of you might be thinking, in what way is plant reproduction exciting? I mean, it's so boring compared to reproduction in humans and animals. Well, that's what I thought too. But then I looked deeper, and as I was preparing for this topic, I realized it's actually really exciting. I mean, plants, they have sex as well. They have sex, yes, just different from us. And their sexual activities are quite exciting as well. You know, we have bisexual flowers, you have inviting animals to come and take your gametes to other plants. It's pretty exciting things. And I hope that you'll find it exciting as well. And in terms of application, right, I mean, why are we learning about plant reproduction? Well, some of you might end up working with plants in the future, whether in gardening or in growing crops. And in all these sort of fields, we need some ideas, some knowledge of how plants reproduce. And the other really cool thing, I think, is that when you go to a supermarket and you look at all the fruits on display like apples and oranges and watermelons, now with your knowledge of plant reproduction, you have a better idea of what these fruits are and relate them back to the plants. So I think that in itself is quite a meaningful thing. So how do plants reproduce? Well, before diving into the details, I would like you to have an idea of the big picture of what we're going to be looking at. So firstly, plants can reproduce in two ways: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Now, asexual reproduction, if you recall from the last lesson, is reproduction that involves a single parent, where the offspring that are produced are identical clones of the parent. An example being the potato. So if I take this potato out, plant it somewhere else, it will grow into a new plant that is identical to the parent plant. In plants, the process of asexual reproduction is called vegetative propagation. So plants reproduce asexually through vegetative propagation. Now, of course, plants can also reproduce sexually, and that's helpful because sexual reproduction gives us more genetic variation, which helps the species to adapt better to changes in the environment. Now, sexual reproduction, hopefully remember that it involves the fusion of gametes, right? The male gamete and the female gamete. And of course, this is called fertilization. Now, in plants, before fertilization occurs, there's also pollination. So later on, we'll see how pollination comes in. But an important kind of category they can have is that under sexual reproduction, it might take place through self-pollination or cross-pollination. So we'll take a look at that when we actually get to sexual reproduction. Alright, so just a quick recap of the differences between asexual and sexual reproduction. So remember that in asexual reproduction, just one parent. Sexual reproduction is usually two parents, sometimes one. In asexual reproduction, the offspring are all identical. And in sexual reproduction, they are all genetically non-identical. Asexual reproduction involves mitosis, right, cell division, where it produces identical cells. And sexual reproduction involves fusion of gametes, right, fertilization, and also the formation of these gametes through meiosis. And of course, asexual reproduction takes place much faster, while sexual reproduction takes a greater amount of time and resources. Now let's start off by talking about how plants reproduce asexually. Now I've already mentioned that plants reproduce asexually through a process called vegetative propagation. Now it sounds very complicated, but actually it's very simple. Basically what happens is that a new plant, the offspring, right, grows out of a part of a parent plant. Right, and it's only a single parent plant. There's only one parent plant because this is asexual reproduction. So out of the part of the parent plant, a new offspring grows. And usually this part of the parent plant is a modified stem or a storage organ. Right? For example, your potato, right? The tuber. So the potato tuber is part of the parent plant. And if you take it out and place it somewhere else, it will grow into a new offspring. And then onion bulb as well, that's also part of the parent plant, and it can also grow into a new offspring. Now, most of these modified parts are also storage organs. And just a quick question, what do you think the stored food inside these organs are for? Well, they're probably to provide nutrients for the new plant to grow, right? So if you go to the market next time, very interesting, you can point out to your mommy what is a tuber, what is a bulb, what is a rhizome. I think the rhizome is a ginger. Ginger is a rhizome. So you point out to your mom and say, this is how plants reproduce asexually. I learned it in biology. Cool, right? Now, interestingly, we can actually artificially cause plants to undergo vegetative propagation. Right, so this is actually used by a lot of farmers and people who work with growing crops. So for example, you can actually just cut some plants. If you cut off a part of the stem and place it into the soil, it starts growing into a new plant. If you cut off a part of the leaf, it can actually also start, the leaf itself actually interestingly starts sprouting roots and grows into a new plant. So voila, we have produced a new offspring. Now another method which they commonly use is called layering. So what they do is, here's the parent plant, right? We pull out a stem from the parent plant and we dip it into the soil, right? And here, after a while, you'll start to see roots growing, and you can actually cut off the offspring from the parent plant. So this offspring here is an exact clone of the original parent plant as well. And another interesting technique which has been developed recently is called the tissue culture or micropropagation. So what happens is, here's a leaf from the parent plant, and very interestingly, we scrape off little parts, tissue from the parent plant, and you scrape them off and place it into a petri dish containing some nutrient agar, right? It's a bit like agar-agar, but it has nutrients. And these tissue samples, these little tissue bits, will start growing into little tiny plantlets. And we can take these plantlets and grow them in the soil, and each of these plantlet is a clone of the original parent plant. So with this technique, we can clone the parent plant like a lot of times. It's so scary, you can even start your own clone army. Right? And it's just amazing how plants can reproduce so quickly through asexual reproduction. And it's such a fortunate thing that we can use this to help us grow more crops, to help us to grow more food, etc. So this is an application of asexual reproduction in plants. And of course, asexual reproduction is a lot more efficient, it's much faster, no need for that sort of pollination stuff. So even plants, sometimes in favorable environments where the conditions are good, asexual reproduction actually helps them to thrive and quickly colonize the environment. Right, so remember, we already saw that the spider plant can undergo asexual reproduction. Alright, so that's all for asexual reproduction. In the next video, we'll be taking a closer look at sexual reproduction. So I'll see you there.